Everyone, welcome to Digital Drift. It's a space where we explore what's happening across marketing, media, culture, music, you name it. One of the verticals of Digital Drift is what we call Drift Panel. It's kind of a flagship format where we sit down with fellow geniuses and we discuss a different aspect of the industry, what they're working on, get their opinions. We might agree, might not. The idea is that let's have that kind of beneficial conversation. Today's topic is very media oriented, very digital media oriented. It's about the costs of media are rising, specifically digital media. And we've been seeing that over the last couple of years. The question is, are we seeing the benefit of that? Are we seeing what's the end result of that? Is still value? Is attention keeping up to the rise? There's so much noise in today's world, and we're seeing things like CPMs, CPCs, you name it, going through the roof. I have two guests with me. One's a new friend and one's an old friend. I have with me Stephen Sidawi and Sulaiman Korman. So I'm going to pass to Stephen. Give me a quick intro of who you are. Besides that, we've known each other since we were literally 5 years old.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Hussam, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. For those that don't know, we're not only old friends, but we're also old colleagues. I'm also ex-colleagues with Sulaiman. Feel very blessed to be with you guys here today. It's going to be an interesting discussion. Hussam and I used to be called Hooven in our previous job because we were just inseparable.
Hussam, Stephen. We had dad jokes before we were dads.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I've been in the industry for 15 years, working on digital, customer experience, tech, very versatile type of background. All were interesting learning experiences for me, and hopefully we can learn from each other as well on this podcast.
Definitely.
Thanks, Hussam. First of all, pleasure to be on the podcast. Been looking forward to this for a while, actually. As Steve mentioned, we used to work together at Publicis. I've been in the industry for around 11 years. Cross-continental, I started my career actually in North America, in New York City. Then I moved back to the region. I've had different roles encompassing performance marketing, digital transformation, and I'm currently a digital account director at one of the local agencies here in Dubai.
Very cool. How did you see, just a bit of a tangent here, just because I didn't know, how do you see the shift from New York to Dubai? Similar, different?
It's very different, to be honest, Hussam. The region here, whether we like it or not, people are emotional, even on a business level. And this is something that you need to keep in consideration, whether it's in your working atmosphere or when it's targeting audiences or when it's doing business in general. While in North America, people tend to be more, I don't want to say rigid, but just more business focused and less emotional. They're more practical.
Great perspective, honestly. First of all, from an audience perspective, having those local nuances on, what are they expecting? How do you connect with them? And that carries over to the business realm, like even your colleagues, to get them aligned on something. Back to Hussam's point, everything's marketing these days. How do you get everyone in lockstep with a particular project or a vision or something you're trying to drive? So it's taking those into account and managing them and juggling them sometimes can be an interesting thing to do.
100%. Even goes down to the simplest things such as 100%. Email writing, the way you frame and phrase your emails.
Yeah.
Do they use do the needful over there?
I think that's a universal language.
It's one of my favorite things to write to receive and write. Just to bother someone. All right, guys. What I like about having both of you on here is the fact that you guys also have different perspectives. You're both on kind of the different ends of the spectrum. One sells, one buys. It'll be interesting to see how we kind of, and I've kind of been on both client and agency side, so I also have a bit of a perspective. I mean, something I've seen, as a buyer of media, as a buyer of digital media, definitely costs are rising, not just on the big tech, as well as also with our third parties. I mean, the days of ridiculously slashed costs or of like dirt cheap CPMs or even very cheap remnant inventory, I feel are kind of at the end. We're seeing the very end of them. What do you guys think about that? I'll start with Stephen. How are you seeing it from the selling point of view, and what do you think is the reason behind it?
Yeah,
besides just natural inflation of the world, right?
Yeah, I get your point when it comes to inflation, but I actually feel like if we zoom out, there's actually been a natural decline in CPMs over the years, or in media costs in general over the years. And I think it has to do with supply. Like if you go back, to the beginning of digital, there used to be premium publishers. You used to need to have to do kind of like a reservation by, manually negotiate that. And now you're in today's world where you have a creator economy, right? Like right now we're part of the creator economy developing a podcast, but there's more and more content. It's all being kind of democratized and put out there via social media, which is creating a drastic supply of places to market and ways to get out your message as brands. And I think that's also creating natural decline in CPMs, because today Web 2.0, which was basically, I'll create premium content, you guys will consume it, and I'll get my ad revenue as a publisher, is kind of going out the window. And now creators are kind of fueling that content. And because it's so abundant, that's bringing down CPMs. And also, I think natural negotiation of wanting to be competitive in the industry, right? Agencies need to have lower costs if they're competing for a particular client. And then, if you go down into the ecosystem all the way to the client side of things, procurement partners are also looking for lower CPMs. Who's going to give me the lowest cost, and how is that lowest cost going to help benefit, my bottom line as a business as well? That being said, you get to $1 CPMs, and is that right for the business? You look at, things like fraud, things like brand safety, things like viewability, suitability, attention. When you take all of these into account and you dissect the CPM, sometimes when you do arrive at that $1, it's really not, the valuable inventory that you want to be there, from a brand perspective.
Cool. So we're starting off the bat where we disagree already, but I'm going to pass the same man before I get back to you, Steven.
All right.
I can see the tech sales guy is deeply engraved within Steven now. Like, I'm sold, brother. Look, from a performance perspective and like from launching campaigns across different verticals and across industries, I can say that CPMs are a bit inflated on some of the traditional platforms. And I think this is due to the automated and AI-backed bidding system. End of the day, these tech partners, they're looking for profitability. And seasonality has become a very heavy factor now that you have. It used to be one day Black Friday, or it used to be one day Cyber Monday. Now these are like getting elongated into weeks and months and seasons. And you have some other platforms like X, for example, where CPMs have dropped a bit, but it's because users are sacrificing on privacy and placements. So this is also something that goes into factor. But on other platforms like Instagram, basically all the meta inventory, PMax, whether it's on Google, the more premium your ad formats and audiences, the more you're paying, I think, for an inflated CPM.
I do agree that if you're going after the right audience and you're putting your brand in the right environment, you will wind up with a higher CPM. But I also, if we take that to the reality on ground, when CPMs are being negotiated, or, there's a procurement sheet that goes out, ultimately, you need to try and be the lowest. So this is where the stakeholder ecosystem isn't always aligned with what needs to happen, ideally from a marketing perspective.
I think what we're seeing right now, again, two different perspectives, but what we're seeing right now, I feel, is that I think, first of all, the rift between procurement and marketing I don't think has ever been as big. The distance between them has never been as big. But when we talk it from a marketing point of view, this is probably starting mid to late last year. I started to see a very big shift in client digital media thinking, right? Where I'm seeing clients who now let's put procurement on the side for a second, who want now the best quality traffic, best quality acquisitions, who are analyzing these things, and who are putting a lot of pressure on aspects of targeting. I've never seen clients who are actually so now interested or asking questions about targeting before. So what we're seeing is that, from what I'm seeing, is that because you are buying a higher quality audience, now clients, I feel, are finally understanding what data is. It took them many, many years to get to that level. They're finally understanding it. So as a buyer, you now have to buy better quality, which obviously has higher CPMs, even on the big tech. And then you have to play that game. But then obviously, like you said, Stephen, you do have a side of it where they're trying to get the lowest cost. And I feel that is where now agencies are kind of stuck. They don't know which side to satisfy. But as a whole, I'm seeing I'm seeing the buying of media becoming harder or more expensive because of the requests of the client coming in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
If
That's
you
what I'm saying.
dissect the media cost like a CPM, part of that cost, although you think you're paying for media, part of it is actually data. Part of it is the filters that reduces the supply. Let's say, fraud filters or brand safety filters or viewability filters. And
Yeah.
the more you filter that to be more specific to address an audience in a quality way, naturally the reduced supply and your demand is going to increase it. And then if you layer on what Sulaiman was saying, something like a Black Friday or a Ramadan or any of these seasonal events where you have all of these brands piling in and wanting to be part of it, that also naturally inflates the demand side of things. So I can see how that naturally happens, but I also see, businesses trying to, let's say, extract more value by squeezing costs.
Yeah. Do you think Sayman, it's as a, is it harder to find the right audience? Is it becoming harder or is it becoming easier?
I think it's becoming harder to find the right audience. And this goes back also to the privacy measures that have been taken, especially on you have more than half of the audiences using Apple devices, which now gives freedom for the users, to be asked whether they want their preferences to be tracked or not. And we can see this heavily on lead focused businesses. So, lead generation focused businesses. Like you said, they want to justify the cost and in a pretty hardcore way now. So, before it used to be, okay, my CPL is good. I'm getting you this much leads. No, now they're looking at offline ROI also. Like, are these leads actually converting? Are they not? What can we do? And the finger gets pointed directly on performance.
Of course.
Like, how can we refine it? What can we do? But the thing is, the more automation I'm seeing, the less control you have on targeting exact nuances within these audiences.
But don't you think now, even with the rise of AI in the media buying world, yes, now you're the performance guy is now kind of having to take a little step back. You still, but I don't think the clients understand that yet. I don't know if they understand that, but because in the end, like you said, look, we're no matter what, we're always going to be at the bottom of the hill, right? I'm not going to say the word, but it rolls down the hill, right? And we're at the very bottom, right? That's why we get blamed for everything. Do you think do you think now creative is playing a bigger role when it comes to the media buying and the costs associated than before?
I can confidently say yes, Hassan.
Yeah.
We reached a point where data was king and optimization was everything. But I think with the insane amount of clutter that's out there now on all these platforms, creative is key, not just for grabbing attention, it's for having a purpose, being meaningful, being entertaining even. And the most important, in my opinion, is being relevant at that exact touch point in time where the user is interacting with the ad. Because if you're there, you might be there, not at the right time, you're going to be ignored.
Yeah.
Interesting. Do you feel that, are we at the level where that communication internally with their stakeholders are at the level where they can understand that piece of information you said? Can they comprehend it and make changes? Or are we still in the place where we take a TVC and chuck it on YouTube?
No, look, Hussam, I think some agencies have been more proactive on that side in adopting that integrated approach where all the teams are sitting together and planning accordingly, and even inviting third parties and tech partners to come into the mix. Some others they still have a long way to go. And I think whoever doesn't jump on that train the soonest will be left behind.
So how about you, from your angle, how much are you seeing creative play an impact on both the performance as well as also the buying of the media?
Yeah, I was gonna say I agree with Sulaiman that looking at the right touch point is very important. Marrying that up with the right data is very important, and also looking at how an idea can live across channels is also very important. What I love is that as a good example, and I was listening to another podcast recently where they talked about MrBeast's success, and they were talking about what he attributes part of his success to. And that was basically the purple cow effect. Have you guys heard of the purple cow effect?
Yes,
Yeah.
Seth Godin.
Yeah. So basically, you're driving down a street and you see a black and white cow. You're like, I've seen a black and white cow before. And you keep driving, and then all of a sudden you see a purple cow, and you might want to stop the car and get out and see what this purple cow is all about. And I think if brands want to get it right, what is your purple cow? What is your platform that's going to help you actually elevate the brand and, not be part of the clutter, as Sulaiman was saying, but also live in a way where you're developing an experience where a consumer actually wants to stop and listen to what you have to say. So I think that's what will make brands successful. And that's also what will help you get more bang for your buck as a brand. And if you want to even take another step back and look at how the creative process is now starting to be formed, we need to also think about, what are the jobs to be done? How can we, break barriers with each consumer? What data is needed to do that? And then how do we measure success on that front as well?
Do you guys think, I love the MrBeast example. Last I think I read, I think he spends $250,000 on thumbnails.
Oh, wow.
I'm mistaken.
I didn't know that.
I truly believe we're at the place right now where creative is king. And I think where we've gotten to that place, and social media kind of expedited that, and people like MrBeast expedited that, where he pulls 100 million a video on an easy day, right? So do you think we'll get to that place where the average client can understand that you have to start here versus just chuck money at it? I'll leave that open.
So, man, you talk to clients on a daily basis. Go ahead first, and then I'll talk about some of my experience.
Look, I definitely think just the way agencies are running at different paces, clients are doing the same. And that depends on the size and the industry that the client is in, how competitive it is. Like, I would say, looking at real estate or finance, they're very careful. They are very, very careful how they spend their money. But then on the other side, you have e-commerce and automotive, for example. These are industries that I've always seen be on top of the curve. They've always embraced change. They are more bold in their creative testing. They tend to spend more as well. I've recently encountered this with the finance industry, where slowly, and after I think a year of negotiation, we actually convinced them to start utilizing AI creative and spending more on that kind of, visuals that is a bit more, let's say, futuristic / casual / more youth oriented, rather than having that rigid corporate image that banks and finance institutes in general try to wear.
That's interesting. Hey, Steve, go ahead.
So, like Sulaiman said, there's various levels of maturity when it comes to tackling the creative space. I applaud the clients that are open to hearing different perspectives. I've been brought in. Yeah, I've been brought in by different clients simply asking what's the best way to creatively use your platform. And, they gave us the floor, an hour-long session of us giving them frameworks, ideas, and approaches on how to do it, which was fantastic. I've had clients back in 2023 that were brave enough to adopt AI. Although, generative AI, how do we stay on brand? How do we approach, making sure that the clients are going to recognize, the value of this execution? I've also had other clients that were super interested in advert gaming, although they've never really entered the space, because they realized that the attention of that TVC that they've been running for the past 3 years, wasn't really doing their brand justice, and they were losing market share. So some brands are braver to adopt new technologies, new approaches. Others just do business as usual. And I think business as usual is safe, right? Because, if you run a TVC, well, everyone's on YouTube running a TVC, or everyone's created an Instagram story, so it's fine. Let's just do more of that. But really, if you really want to get to a point where you're creating a purple cow, it's adopting these new technologies, which can help you, grab more attention, can help you connect with the consumer a lot better.
Do you think we've gotten better, as in our side of the equation? We think we've gotten better at measuring the right KPIs, if that's it, or say, are we stuck as agency, as suppliers? Are we still stuck in the old ways, or have we evolved, do you think? And let's not do the cushy answer. Let's talk about the real. Because I mean, it's easy to say
my,
yes, but then there's the reality
my
of the ground.
favorite ask is, we have this asset and, we need X number of views on this asset. I've been asked that from a KPI perspective. And for me, the number of views you have is absolutely useless if it has not moved your brand metrics. And Hussam, you're right in saying creative can be king, but then I'll augment that by, if you're actually talking to the right audience and if your creative is addressing the right job to be done with that audience. So I think, in some spaces, we're still looking at vanity metrics. In other spaces where brands are willing, most importantly, willing to invest in proper measurement. And that could be pre-campaign, where you're doing pre-copy testing and understanding if your creative is actually addressing the job to be done properly. And then also post-campaign measurement. So if you want to sit down with the business as a head of marketing, as a CMO, as anything, and go back and say, this is the business metric I moved, then you're going to be speaking that CEO's language. You're going to be speaking to the commercial head's language, or, whichever audience that you're trying to, internally market to, that your efforts and the money that you spent on behalf of the business was well spent. I think you always need to look at the business problem you're trying to solve, and then how your campaign or how your activity impacted that business problem.
I think that a lot of businesses, and I understand clients from this side, they still rely a lot on these traditional or outdated, in my opinion, KPIs. And these are just because they're easier to track. They're what you call boardroom safe. So it's easy to go and say, look, I got 1 million views on my reel. We're doing really great. This is why marketing teams are sticking to those. But with the rise of the privacy constraints that we've talked about, the automation, these metrics don't really give a full story. They don't really reflect the true business impact. And it's, in my opinion, it's like you're driving a Tesla with a 2005 map embedded into it. Like, you're moving, you're just not going in the right direction. There's a major role, I think, on that side to be played between agencies and tech partners, whether the direct tech partners, the platforms, or third party platforms, where they need to jointly approach the client and convince him that this is what you need to do. This is what brings more value. This actually has more depth into it than just inflated numbers that you're seeing here. Because on the long run, when there's no actual change on the ground, they're going to turn around and point the finger straight to you.
Definitely.
Sulaiman, back to your point on the business side of things. I think this is where a lot of folks also need to discuss the business process that's on the back end of the media campaign, right? If it's a new account opening, if it's a lead, if it's whatever type of, conversion you're looking towards optimizing, basket size, whatever it is. And what does the business process on the back end look like? Like, you got a conversion for, I don't know, 100 dirhams. And then that customer, over the course of the next year, had a customer lifetime value of 10,000 dirhams, whereas your average LV is 5,000 dirhams. That's actually a success. That's actually a win. Don't look at the first basket. Look at, the overall picture of the value of the customer that your agency has brought you, or your tech partner has brought you.
Yeah.
Or if you're delivering a lead, maybe my lead is quality, but there was a Harvard study way back when they said that if you don't contact the lead within 5 minutes, they're very likely to be cold. And is a lead being contacted within 5 minutes? And is that lead being handled properly? Or are you doing a pre-qualification call, and then post the pre-qualification call will put you through to a salesperson, and then you're creating like these multiple touches, which we all know from a performance perspective. The more time that the customer needs to interact with your brand to get, what their goal is, and their goal might be to buy something from you, might be to get more information, you're going to have more drop-offs every time another touch point is added. So, my recommendation always, whenever media agencies, suppliers, clients are talking, is what does the back end of the business process look like? And is the KPI fitting to that business process? Ultimately, are we going to look at, not just what marketing did, but then the end result with the customer and how they were handled. And that goes back to looking at customer experience metrics and not just, pure media metrics as well.
To do all that, I think you need a very sophisticated client way of thinking.
Yeah.
It's a complexity that really needs to, I think, to be developed from the get-go.
I agree. I think a lot of clients are pretty sophisticated, but also, if they have a good agency partner or a good supplier that partners with them and like through developing a JBP, I think a continuous loop of education is required. Clients talking about their business processes, their goals, their challenges, and then also agencies saying, okay, this is how we can fit into that. This is some flagship thinking. This is a new trend. This is a new thing that we can adopt that will actually help you move the needle. And that's where that ecosystem of stakeholders comes into play. How can we all play nice together to meet that end goal that we're looking to develop?
Yeah, I just adding on what Steve said there, and I've been also dealing with this firsthand, is that internally within clients, yeah, a lot of them have reached that sophisticated level, but there's a bit of bureaucracy that you need to always take into consideration, whether it's between the sales team, the marketing team, and the product team themselves. And the closer these collaborate, the better feedback you have on results and the outcome. And the more they're distant and careful with each other. And I see this a lot with sales and marketing, like getting feedback from sales to marketing tends to be hard sometimes, especially if the feedback is positive. Each teams want to attribute the sales to themselves. So I think once that level of maturity is reached at the client side, that's when performance team and digital teams and suppliers will have an actual clear feedback. So I wouldn't say this is purely on that side of the business. No, the client definitely has a responsibility to project proper feedback and proper outcome from the ground back to tracing it to the digital channels that initiated it.
True. I like what you said. It goes back to the old saying, victory has 1,000 fathers, defeat is an orphan. Everyone always wants to take credit, but if you look at it like an ecosystem, everyone played a part, everyone supported in this goal. That's where you get that healthy collaboration that winds up delivering better results.
Yeah, you guys gave me a lot to think about. So the way I'd like to kind of bring it down is the final question, which is this podcast is called Digital Drift for a reason. Is that what is one belief, one thought process that you've drifted on lately, that you've changed, it shifted in your realm?
Yeah, I think being more data driven in everything we do. I think that's something that I've been drifting on quite a bit. Ultimately, if you want to stand out and you have the right data, you can understand the consumer properly, you can address them properly, and you can measure success properly. And I encourage every marketer. I was reading this Forbes article that, they did this study in the US where they looked at how many ads a prospect or a consumer is exposed to on a daily basis. And their count was something along the lines of 4,000 to 10,000. So if you're a marketer, if you're an agency, if you're a supplier, I urge you, the next time you go out in the Middle East, let's count how many ads we're exposed to, even when we're at home, and let's post it in the comments, and let's see the amount of clutter that we have to deal with as an industry. And let's also think about how we can not add to that clutter, how we can develop experiences that are worthwhile. The first digital ad, which is an AT&T banner, was a banner ad, had around a 44% CTR, and today we're sitting at 0.2%. It shows how marketers have created a gradual decline in attention just because of the clutter we've developed. It might take a little bit more time, a little bit more investment of non-working media to understand the consumer and understand the data that you have available and invest in the right channels and invest in the right measurement. But yeah, if you do that right, you won't be adding to the clutter and you will be creating the right experiences. And that's why, I said it all starts with the right data.
I like that, Sana. How about you, Simon? What have you drifted on?
I'm just trying to imagine 44% CTR. I think
You see my
I'd
banner?
have the easiest
it's
job on the planet.
it's a leaderboard. It's a leaderboard that says click here, click here, click here, click here in rainbow color.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely 100% agree with Steve here on putting data first. Data will reflect everything you do, whether it's optimization strategies, whether it's your creative, whether it's the audience you're targeting. But a big shift in how I do things personally and fellow teams that I've seen in different agencies, and even on the brand side, is first of all the cross-platform journey. So before that, the social team used to work on something, the search specialist used to work on something, programmatic used to just top funnel everything. Now it's really important to study the user behavior. Like you might start somewhere, convert not somewhere else. You might consider it on a platform, wait a week, convert on a different platform. So understanding the user journey across the platforms from exposure to consideration to conversion is very, very important. And something else is channel versus audience planning. So your audiences are not the same across channels. Sometimes they are, sometimes they start somewhere, they convert something somewhere else. But you need to also consider that each channel has its own age group, own interests. It has its own vibe. So the people on there are looking for different things. It might be informative, it might be entertaining, it might be just casual. So that's something also that teams need to consider when planning. And this is where the heavy lifting comes on media planners and account managers to bring creative teams and data teams and performance teams together and to just bridge that gap. And the tighter that gap is, in my opinion, the more solid your strategy is.
I like that. Tighten it up, guys. Tighten it up. All right, so
We're trying. We're trying.
We're gonna end it there, guys. Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it on the flagship inaugural episode of the Digital Drift with our first ever Drift panel. Hopefully, we'll see you guys on here more. A lot of interesting topics coming up. All listeners out there, please subscribe, follow, check out the guys on LinkedIn. I'll make sure all the information is in the comments. From they got me thinking a lot. It's always fun.
Awesome.
Always a pleasure, Sam.
Thanks for having us.